You're gonna learn more in this video than in 100 of videos elsewhere. I'm gonna play here as white and I'm gonna explain all of my decisions in the process. I'm gonna share the only strategy you need to get to 2000 ELO easily. My opponent is doing something weird. I mean, he has YouTube in his nickname, so maybe he's streaming or something, but a6 is not the first move you want to make, but there is a very high chance that one of your opponents will do it, so I want to show you how to react. You don't need to do anything weird. So many people tell me, well, what you're showing is working so well if the opponent is playing reasonably, but my low-rated opponents are doing so weird moves that I have no idea how to react to that. Well, you don't need to react weirdly on their weird decisions. You just need to play normally. Just focus on the center and the opening, develop all of your pieces, bring it as active as possible, and then secure your king and go all in into the attack. If your opponent is wasting time with his moves, not developing his pieces, guess what? It just helps you to develop your pieces faster. I mean, just ignore it, completely ignore it, as long as it does not create a huge threat for you. So, I don't know, I sincerely want to play f4 here, just grab the entire space, the entire center, because the more space you control, the simpler it gets for you. I'm gonna play knight f3, I'm gonna play c3 if he plays c5 and tries to challenge me. And I have a fantastic position here. Okay, bishop d3. Maybe I don't even play bishop d3 because he has the space problem. He wants to play something like that, right? So let me just bring my bishop to e2. I don't want to make life easy for my opponent. In fact, I want the opposite. I want to create as many threats as possible for him so he feels pressure on every single move. Yeah, this is something very artificial, but very high chance that you're gonna get something like that in your game, because if your opponent is lower than 2000 ELO, he's not playing normal openings like I'm used in my games. He's playing some absolutely random stuff like that. And you don't need to reinvent the wheel here to be successful. You just need to bring all of your pieces, but you need to pay attention to what your opponent is doing. So always think about what he wants to achieve. This is the one trick that is going to help you win so many more games. Think about your opponent first. All right? How does that work in reality? Believe me, it's going to tremendously improve your chess kind of instantly, just once you implement this into your mindset. This one mindset shift is the key. So your opponent makes a move. Try to think, what is the idea behind that move? Does it create any threats? Well, it attacks this pawn, this pawn. Is it a problem for me? No, because I have a lot of defenders for that. This is just one part. If you don't use the second part of this rule, well, you're gonna lose miserably. The second part is whenever you're about to make your move, for example, bishop e3 seems like a reasonable move here. First, think what your opponent can do. It turns out my opponent can attack, especially like you're about to move a piece. Check whether this piece can be taken or it can be attacked. He can attack me with knight g4, and then either I am allowing that exchange, which I don't want, or I have to go back, which I also don't want, because the golden rule is just one move on every single piece. That way you develop your pieces as fast as possible. So I don't want him to attack me. I'm gonna just play h3 and make sure that this knight is so stupid there on h6. Basically, it does not participate in the game. Maybe the alternative was queen to b3, but that's fancy stuff. I don't need that. I want to show you that if you play simple chess, but you follow this one trick, you think about your opponent first, you're always good to go. Of course, if you are playing against a very strong opponent, he's gonna create a lot of threats for you and you might end up having some trouble. But if you're playing under 2000 ELO, our goal here is to reach that level. Only top 1% of chess players ever reach that. Once you reach that, I will be happy to share with you more advanced strategy. But for now, let's focus on this simple one. Let's implement it in your game. You're gonna beat everyone around at your level. You have never dreamed of getting such a result before. And then we are gonna talk how do you get even further in chess. All right, so remember, focus on the development in the opening. I still haven't developed those pieces. Okay, he's so desperate with his knight. He sees that he has no moves, that he takes on b1, gives up his bishop just to get some life for this knight. This is actually not that stupid, but I now have a pair of bishops which I am super happy about, even though this bishop is not that great yet. It seems like it's pretty close, but I'm gonna try to find a way for it to improve. And then I'm gonna show you how great it is to have a pair of bishops. It's kind of like having the Caro-Kann or a French defense where he puts pressure on this d4 pawn. And actually, yeah, it turned out not that bad for him. I don't want to take, that will help him to improve his pieces. g4 might be a very active move on my agenda, but yeah, it does seem to be too weird. Maybe just bishop d3. Maybe I want to exchange that guy on f5. It's pretty annoying here, creating a lot of threats. And if he plays knight g3, then I avoid this fork and I'm gonna just step back. Very important, if he takes, think about your opponent first, then I'm gonna take here on f5 and then take back. Yes, I have enough defenders. I'm good to go. Because, yeah, somehow he's building some pressure against this d4 pawn with queen to b6 coming, and now I want just to take it, play bishop e3, and I'm safe. Yes, I'm gonna lose my pair of bishops advantage, but not just like that, because I'm gonna get something in response. Like, you have your two bishops advantage so that you can use it at some point. And one of the advantages is that you can pretty much always exchange one of your bishops against the knight in a situation where it's reasonable for you, when it gives you an advantage. Okay, he instead wants to save his knight and plays knight to g3, but that's fine for me, because now I have a bishop, which is very active. Now his knight is not putting any pressure on my pawn, and he even plays c4, which is removing the entire pressure at all. Like, this is not good. What is his plan? I still have this beautiful bishop. One day I'm gonna play f5. Maybe he's gonna play it with g6, but still, I'm gonna break through somehow. I have an opportunity to break through here, and normally you can never control both of those things. I'm gonna improve my bishop. Remember, again, doesn't matter how weird your opponent plays, you need to develop all of your pieces, bring all of them into the game. So I want to bring it here on f2, where I'm gonna attack this knight, and maybe he's just gonna go back, but that means he lost a lot of time, and he doesn't put any pressure on the d4 pawn anymore. I don't need to worry about that anymore. This is what happens so often with the lower rated players. They know how to make the first few moves, although in this case it was questionable, but in the middle game, and especially in the endgame, they just collapse. If you are careful enough to go through with your system, with the system I'm sharing with you here, basically one trick to always think about your opponent first, then in these later stages of the game, you're just gonna destroy them. For example, here I can just take it, takes back, and I can play knight d2, and I attack both of the pawns. Yeah, he wants to play queen d5, but this is just one move solution. I'm gonna play queen c2, create another threat against the e4 pawn. You don't need to calculate that fancy, you just need to know that you can take, and then he's gonna have a huge weakness. Yeah, c4 is weak, but e4 is even more weak. It's doubled, and there is no way this pawn is gonna survive. So you don't need to calculate like everything to the end. I can also remove my bishop and attack it again. I mean, this is no go for black. I don't even get what kind of an idea he has, because he doesn't have any counterplay. He's strategically absolutely busted, and he doesn't have any tactical play to back it up, to somehow create some counterplay. You just cannot do that. All right, let me show you how you convert the advantage, because it's one thing to get a good position. I have no idea why he's thinking like you have to take that bishop back, bro, otherwise you're lost immediately. Or maybe he's realizing that this was very, very silly decision. So it's not enough to get a good position. Most of the players fail because they cannot use their good position and actually convert it into a full point. So if you cannot do that, everything that we have learned so far is absolutely useless. So let me show you how exactly you do that. You always and always keep an eye on your opponent's counterplay. My biggest problem in my entire chess career was that I haven't actually paid enough attention to what my opponent is doing, and I have lost so many games, especially when my position seems to be close to winning, like it's the case here. Okay, what is the best? I feel like queen c2 is the simplest, because bishop f2 would be a move with the same piece that has already been developed, whereas queen to c2 is developing a new piece. And if given a choice, if it seems like both moves are reasonable, always prefer the move that develops a new piece. Yeah, you see, he doesn't have any way to somehow stop me from grabbing that pawn. The question is whether I take with the queen and exchange the queens, or I take with the knight and continue playing with the queens. I feel like I want to exchange the queens, because it's also the most simple way, and I want to show you a very simple way to win in chess. I'm going to have an extra pawn, so that means I'm up in terms of the material. In such a situation, you want to exchange your pieces, especially the queens, because the queens are the most powerful pieces that allow your opponent to create some counterplay, to create some threats, for example, against your king, create some checkmating attack. Guess what? Without the queens, it's literally almost impossible. And so that would be just a technical position where I'm a pawn up, and I'm going to show you how to convert that advantage. It's also very important. You're going to improve your endgame technique so much thanks to this video. So he takes it. Okay. Yeah, that's reasonable, because otherwise his pawn structure is also very bad. If I take, he takes, then I'm going to have this f5 breakthrough. And this way he tries to make sure that that does not happen. But I do have d5 breakthrough this time. Even has his king now. Remember about the b3 breakthrough as well that I have mentioned in the beginning. That does make sense, because then I'm going to play c4, d5, and my pawn structure will just go forward. And as long as I move those pawns to the light squares, my dark squares bishop, would be beautiful. You always, like if you have dark squares bishop, both of you always want to have your pawns on the light squares, normally. My position is an exception, because then you control all sorts of squares. Now I don't really control the light squares. If you imagine this knight coming to d5, if I'm gonna sleep for like a few moves, that might be a problem, because the knight would be a fantastic piece there. So I have one plan to play rook to d1 here, prepare the move d5 just to break through here, or another plan to play b3. I feel like rook d1 is more active. I want to play with my pieces, like why not? Also, his king on d7 is just screaming at me, play d5, open up the file and destroy him. So that's what I'm gonna do. And again, that's gonna open up my bishop. And this pawn on c4, it actually might be a weakness in the end of the day. Maybe from that perspective, a4 makes a little bit of sense to make this move b5 more difficult. But again, this is fancy stuff. Just play normally, rook d1, reasonable. Like every move you make in chess should either help you to achieve your goal or stop your opponent from achieving his goal. You don't want to waste any moves, any times, because time is the most important resource, especially like unnecessary pawn moves. Remember, first of all, pawns don't go back. And secondly, pawn moves don't help you if it does not achieve your specific goal. Either you make this move like to develop your piece, or you make this move to fight for the center, like I am doing in this case. But you don't make unnecessary pawn moves, which will just waste your time. All right, I still play d5. Yes, he has prepared a little bit. And so I need to play d5. You also always want to use your momentum. If I'm gonna just sleep on a wheel for one single move, my opponent will just play king to c7. And he's gonna cover the d5 square. And I'm not gonna play d5 anymore. And now I am. Which helps me again in terms of breaking with my pieces. Yes, the drawback is somehow his king is pretty good there. I ideally want to exchange those bishops so that I can jump with some checks. And also, somehow I hoped to double on the d file, but now it's not really possible. Maybe I just step back. Or I step back to d2. Might be also interesting. Yes, king f5 though, which is a little bit annoying. Okay. Yeah, so that's what I meant. It's not that simple. You still need to be a little bit careful not to allow your opponent too much counterplay. Rook d1 is the safest option here. I don't see any problem with it. Let's just play it. Then I want to bring my king to the center. Remember that as soon as the queens are off the board, the king in most of the cases is out of the danger. Of course, there are like exceptions, 1 out of 500, but mostly you want to use your king in the endgame because it's another attacking piece. They say the king is as strong as a rook in the endgame. That is how powerful it is. Okay, my opponent just exchanged the rooks, which is weird because he's given up the control of the d file. Maybe he's not worried about that. And he wants, to break through here. That makes sense because he probably wants to open up the g file and somehow attack here. Yeah. Or maybe he wants to play h4. That might be an idea. Yeah. I have to acknowledge that my opponent is playing pretty good in this endgame. Maybe I just take and secure my extra pawn. Because when the e file is going to be opened, that is not necessarily good news for my opponent. Yeah, this is the simplest. Again, one of the biggest problems in chess for all of the players, and especially for the players under 2000, you tend to overthink a lot of things, just is in our life. And so in most of the cases, you don't need to do that. Yes, he takes our pawn, but we have taken his pawn. We are going to have a protected pawn on g5, which limits his potential a lot. We don't have any weaknesses anymore. And now we can just continue, for example, with the move knight to c5, which is a very aggressive move, given a check, basically forcing him to exchange. Have to be careful, though. Again, always think about your opponent first. He's going to have knight d3 in the end. That is quite annoying because first of all it's a pin, a fork. I can play bishop d4, but then somehow he attacks this. He's gonna play here and attack this. I don't like that knight there. So maybe I just play bishop d4, pin it here, and put some pressure on it. I like it. Because next I can play knight d2, which is attacking that pawn on c4. It's protected for now, but I can take here before, taking on c4, and then I just win another pawn. That would be great. And by playing knight to d2, I also create another threat of rook e1. Or I might start with rook e1, in fact. For example, here. That creates multiple threats. I think it's very dangerous for him. Ah, wait, I have to consider that move. Knight to d3 again. Because my idea is, of course, knight f6 check, which is still possible. He takes my rook, I take his rook, but then he takes on g5 and my knight is stupid there, so it's not very good. If I play my move knight d2, he's probably gonna play that. And after bishop e5, he's even taken here. Also not that great. Maybe I just play h4 and just defend that pawn like that. Because I'm even gonna have knight g3. Yeah, let's do that. Let's just make sure we are as solid as possible before we go all in and attack our opponent. If he plays knight d3 now, maybe I just have b3. He cannot take, the knight is hanging. And if he plays b5, I can exchange it and attack this pawn again with my knight. My bishop, notice, you don't want to get too many pieces unprotected. The more pieces you have unprotected, the more dangerous it gets for you. So in the best case scenario, you have all of your pieces protected. For example, yeah, I have this knight unprotected, which is a little bit of a problem. So I go back to d2. Or maybe I even play knight g3 check and then take. Yeah, let's do that. Ah, wait, I have to be a little bit careful. Again, you don't want to hang too many pieces. King g4, if I take, he has knight to b2. Yeah, still fine, I have rook b1. He takes here, I take there, I have an extra pawn. Even though it's doubled, but it's still great. I'm gonna play c5, and this pawn is weak. And if he takes on c4 with his knight, I can even take on b7 because I create yet another threat. That feels reasonable. Let's see if he plays king g2. I mean, I can just play king h2. No, king h2 is not great. He has bishop d6. So again, you see how much I'm focused on what my opponent can do. It's literally the most important thing, and especially if you want to achieve 2000 elo, this is like the one single best thing that you can do to improve your chess. Another move that I notice here is knight to f1, somehow to jump over here. But he also attacks that pawn, actually. So this is not not that simple. Maybe I just take. So knight b2, rook b1, knight c4, take, and take there. Ah, no, he can't because... Yeah, he can. But okay, I win a lot of stuff. So again, always start with the most active opportunities, checks, captures, and threats. And bdxc is a capture, and that's the simplest, because the more material you remove from your opponent, the simpler it gets for you to fight against whatever remaining material he has. And so this knight doesn't have this support. The c4 pawn was great for him, securing this beautiful knight on d3. Well, guess what? Now it's gone, and this knight is hanging, and he has to deal with that problem. Okay, he actually takes. Ah, right, because he takes on h4. But this king feels a little bit weird there. Like, I can't even play that. He cannot take because he lose his rook, or bishop f2. But yeah, it doesn't help me that much. Or does it? Yeah, maybe I just play bishop f6 instead. Because that way I secure my extra pawn for now. Right? I do have an extra pawn, yes. And then rook d7 is coming, attacking a lot of pawns. So we now have a rook's endgame. Still not that easy. Let's see if I can succeed with it. Rook's endgame is like single most difficult endgame in chess. And yes, maybe the engine, well, definitely the engine will somehow hold it against a human, but it doesn't matter. When you play a real practical game, all you care about is that you can create as many threats for your opponent as possible. And if he can deal with all of them, well, good for him. He has done a good job. But in reality, it's very, very complicated. I'm gonna just eat all of his pawns, and let's see how many extra I'm gonna get in the end. Probably just one, though. I thought of that, but yeah, I don't really get a lot. Maybe I play rook b3 instead. So that the more pawns you exchange, the simpler it gets for your opponent to make a draw. So I want to leave more pawns on the board so that I can put more pressure on my opponent. Again, probably it's a draw in terms of the objective evaluation of the position, but who cares? I know that I'm going to attack my opponent here for 100 moves, if not more. If he can deal with all of the threats and make all of the perfect moves, he has earned his draw. I'm fine with that. Okay, so that is no idea because I have rook b4 in the end. Now, finally, I need to bring my king into the action. Remember, the king is the most important piece in the endgame, and most of the players completely forget about that, and that is why they lose in the endgame. So, what do you want to make with your king? You want to bring it to wherever the actions are happening. Mostly in the center. I do have a lot of weaknesses here, so if I bring my king somewhere here, that should help. It attacks here, then I still have an opportunity to go to f3, or maybe, okay, he goes back. That's very unusual. Let me for now play king e3. If that, I have that. Or rook b2, I'm not even sure. Both moves deserve attention, because the golden rule is you always want to put your rook behind the pawn. Let's actually try it. Like rook c2, and just push it as far as possible. That is the best strategy, because that would force your opponent to put one of his pieces behind, which is very passive. I have to be a little bit careful. I do have that pawn hanging. Maybe king to d3 first. Maybe I even want to like bring my king over to the queen side, because then I'm gonna be able to push and like step by step and attack that a6 pawn. I try to be somehow creative in this endgame, because I understand I need to put pressure on my opponent. I don't want it to be obvious for him. I don't want him to have an easy life in this endgame. I mean, c4 also deserved attention, because after check, I go somewhere. He takes, I play c5, he goes there, I play c6. Yeah, probably he still makes a draw. Although I play king g4 and I actually attack that pawn. Yeah, he has rook a4. Yeah, the material is very limited. That is why I should be careful here. But I believe I still have chances. Let's see. I'm pretty sure I have missed a better chance, because the endgame seemed to be very good. But in the end of the day, of course, The only thing that matters is the result. King to d5, yes. Do I play c4 here? Maybe not yet. Maybe I just play rook f2. For now, trying to improve my rook. Because c4 he has king c5, and don't see a good way to follow up. So yes, the rook behind the pawn is always great as long as you can push that pawn, which is not that simple. Okay. Yeah, if I play that, he plays king there. Let's give it a few checks. That's never a problem. By the way, a very good strategy to add some time to your clock when you play with the increment. Maybe I take this pawn actually now, because I'm gonna have 2 against this 1. That might be interesting. This is the way for me to make progress. Ah, he gives me a check. But okay, I'm gonna remaneuver. Let's try. I have nothing to lose. I have an extra pawn. I will always have a draw. But yeah, I have to agree, his pawn is very dangerous. Which will make it difficult for me. Probably we are gonna achieve some kind of a filter position in the end, which is a draw. Like if I play king c4, he has that. But let's try to improve step by step. For example, we play that. He plays rook b2. Let's start with c4, why not? We'll have a way to go forward. And maybe not, maybe he plays king to c6 now. Let's see. Because this way he doesn't have any checks, and if I play king b4, okay, he does allow me to go forward. Let's do that, why not? Ah, he has a trick. If I play here, he has the check, rook f5, and then he promotes. This is smart. This is smart. I have to be careful about that. Let's play a5. Wait, actually all I need to do is just move my rook, then it's not going to be a problem anymore. Now I can play king b5, because if he checks me, I play king c5. And then I have a check. Let's play that for now. Yeah, I don't achieve much actually. Probably my only way to make progress is to give this check and to go forward with my king, giving up the pawn. That's what usually happens if you have 2 passers, you sacrifice one of them just to make some progress. But now his king is weirdly placed here. Wait, have that, right? And then I push my pawn. I kind of like hide behind his king so he cannot give me a check. He can play something like rook b2 and give me a check next move, but I already moved pretty much forward. How are you gonna stop that pawn? At some point, if I get to c7, I'm gonna threaten that move rook h2, because yeah, I'm threatening c8. Okay, do I need to give a check first? Probably not, because I don't want to allow this king to go back. And if he plays that, I still can play to c7. Well, now I can just cut this king so that it stays here. I think king c5 was a mistake. I think king d5 was a better choice for me. Although no, after king to d5 I had king d7, which is also good for me. And now I just play king d7 and push my pawn. The good thing is he's not in time to like protect his pawn. That would be a draw for him. But yeah, now I'm just winning, right? I can take actually and then promote. I can promote immediately, although then he takes and threatens dead. Ah, wait, the simplest thing is just to play rook h4 check and then promote. Yeah, so that's exactly what I meant. I'm sure the endgame was equal at some point. I mean, if you make all of the perfect moves, it would be a draw, but I have created threats for my opponent. He has defended pretty well to some extent, but then he made a mistake, and that allowed me to use my chance, and win the game. I hope this game was instructive for you. I hope you have learned so much. For some reason, my opponent does not want to give up here. He wants to check my ability to give a checkmate with the king and the rook, which is very weird. But okay, maybe a good point for me to illustrate my strategy. All you need to do is just push the king all the way to the back rank, and then it's going to be simple. I like this strategy of just waiting a move, bring your rook there, and then, okay, he's not even really fighting. But if he goes to the side exactly like that, then you want to wait until he comes back. Otherwise, you just step one move closer, and whenever he goes here, you have the opposition, then you give a check and push him further away. And now you play king d3, and depending on where he goes, you move the rook to the other side. And then you repeat his moves. And finally, that is a checkmate. Fantastic game. And if you want to know the only opponent that you need as black to defeat everyone under 2000 elo, this is the perfect video for you to watch next.